Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another 21st Century Renaissance and another open interest news at a breakdown on GameStop. I'm your host, Dr. Michael LoPiano, and today we are going to be continuing to take a look at our options data on the approach to our ex-dividend date and dividend issuance next Tuesday. That's coming up in our financial discussion for today. Before we do, we will turn our attention to our Bible reading of the day, continuing along here with our examination of the book of Genesis. And this week's focus on the story of Cain and Abel. As a reminder, in our last video, right, we took a look at the pretext, the situation that Cain in particular, the eldest of the two sons, the twin sons, soon to be hostile brothers of Adam and Eve, of course, the two of them filling this very common topos in mythology, that of the hostile brothers, but in a particular way here, right, which attempts to sketch out the preconditions for the major turn of this story, right? This is something of a failed hero narrative. This is both in terms of something that we ourselves are to reflect on, and something that we are to consider in the history of mankind itself, at least from the biblical perspective. So let's take a look here at verses 8 through 16. So the story resumes after Cain is troubled by the insufficiency of his sacrifice before God and the superiority of his younger brother's sacrifice. Here it is. And Cain talked with Abel his brother. And it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel, thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, That is the Lord. What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened up her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond upon the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. And the Lord said unto him, Therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, only east of Eden. So here we have this account of not really merely the slaying, right? The murder itself, the act of the murdering of of Abel by Cain is actually very, very basic. This is the actual murder itself is a turning point, but it's not really the focus of the story. The focus of the story is on Cain and his experience, right? What comes as a result of electing to go down this path? What we see is an attempt to capture the spirit of someone who has acted out of this desire of envy, of jealousy, of resentment, right? A desire to really rob the community of what is best, right? We see that Cain sees that his brother is loved, that his brother offers goodness to the community, that God's favor is visited not only upon Abel, but upon the community as a whole as a result of what he is able to sacrifice because of his offerings, right? Favor with God, of course, in the Bible is, as we've seen, right? One's orientation with God is not merely a personal thing. One's actions, as in the case of Adam and Eve, right? One's actions have consequences that ripple far beyond the individual. The individual is, as we don't necessarily, are not necessarily prone to think about it this way, but the individual, or who the individual is, who a human being is, let's say, is not a node or an island or something like that, but really, yes, I think not so much an island, but a node in a network, and is something more than just what is housed within the individual body, something like that. So Cain robbed the community of his brother Abel. Cain, out of a sense of resentment, seems to go ahead and commit this murder. And the spirit that he adopts is a spirit of avoidance, a sense of, why are other people, right? Am I my brother's keeper is an important line. And the idea is something like, yes, right? You are. So there is a reaction, let's say, to this act, which is to avoid, to distance, to separate. Cain is alone, right? And when God pronounces his curse as someone who is a vagabond, who is a fugitive, who cannot be in one place for a given amount of time, who is separated from the community, that as a result of this, right, this is what comes to Cain. That this is something which Cain has inflicted on himself. Right? Cain is already exhibiting this behavior, right? As soon as Cain does this, right, he's already responding in such a way that is cut off. Am I my brother's keeper? What do I have to do with this? Yeah. So there is a separation that Cain has inflicted on himself, and these are the consequences thereby. This is, at least from the perspective of the Bible, right? This is an integral part of the history of mankind, right? All of mankind, by what the Bible has to share here, right? We are the descendants of Cain. This is, right? Abel is killed. Cain survives. And we as human beings are descended from this. We as human beings are descended from Adam and Eve. We are descended from their offspring, which is Cain. And let's say not the greater, which found favor with God, which knew to find favor with God, which knew to comport the shepherding lifestyle, but from Cain, who is cursed to be a vagabond, who shall have difficulty in growing things from the soil, who is a fugitive, who is perhaps disliked by others, but pitied perhaps at the same time and feared at the same time, that some similar sort of retribution or curse should fall upon whoever should bring harm to him. So this story concludes, right? The story concludes that the first root of mankind, quite literally here, Cain, the first man that is to be born of man or woman, the first notable act that this individual, this human being, is to perform within his life is the murder of his brother, the erasure of someone who acted in harmony with creation and found favor with God, who knew how to make the proper sacrifices. Cain's immediate reaction as the first fruit of mankind is to erase such a person from the face of the earth. So the Bible certainly says, right, at least in the context of the book of Genesis, the story of Genesis is this progression forward in time of the consequences of this original sin, the desire by mankind to take the place of God. So one thing I can certainly say, right, whether you put stock in this narrative or not, you can dismiss it with a wave of the hand, perhaps if you are so inclined. But the story, at the very least, begs human beings to consider the implications of our actions, of our decisions, of the lives that we lead, of the choices we make intergenerationally. And this is something, again, that we'll pick up, right? This is from the very beginning, this is sewn into the fabric of the narrative of the Bible. To think, to see intergenerationally, and to realize what the consequences of our actions will be intergenerationally. One of the unforeseen consequences, because this is it, right? If we pursue, this is the idea that is contained throughout the Bible, if we pursue our desires purely according to our own wits, our own intellect, our own understanding, rather than account for what may be better but unknown, which is, let's say, hidden in the fabric of creation, but provided to us through the structure of creation, which God has ordered. If we pursue that false dream by means of our own understanding alone, that the consequences do not stop with us, right? Adam's decision has consequences for Eve. It has consequences for animal kind, right? The serpent. But now in this very next story, we see it has consequences for their offspring. The decisions that Adam and Eve have made lead to the building of a family wherein murder comes into being. And the murder is not of a foreigner. The murder is not of some other thing out there, right? The murder is committed against what is nearest, closest, dearest, most valuable, and best. It is a murder of a loved one. It is a murder of who is most like Cain. It is a murder of what Cain could be. It is a murder of what could lead us into greater alignment and harmony with the divine and the order of creation. Something certainly to consider there. Is this something, let's say, that, right, the claim is that this is something that we are capable of. This is something perhaps not only that we are capable of, but that we actually do on a regular basis. That the capacity to do this is within each of us, right? Cain is not someone else. Cain is us. Adam is not someone else. Adam is us. That is the idea there. So something perhaps to consider is, am I perhaps in my own way of going about my life? Am I not only, for example, we talked about this last time, am I not only refusing to acknowledge that my way of living is not the best way of living for me, right? That my way of living is not producing the desired results because of my willful blindness or ignorance or something like that, right? We use the example of the retail options trader that won't stop trading long calls because, you know, the next one's going to work out, the next one's going to work out, the next one's going to work out. But beyond this, right, one step beyond that is to be so bitter over the fact that one's own private wish for how creation would work according to the imagination of the intellect of the individual, that is so great that when there is the example of someone else who is living according to the true harmony of the creation and the order of creation, when someone like that exhibits the behaviors that show the way that we could follow, especially if we can follow it, our desire is to respond to it with a murderous rage. Is there something, let's say, in each of our lives that we are doing, right? Do we look, for example, right? Do we look at billionaires of a certain kind? Do we look at, say, billionaires solely because they have billionaires and we say, to death with this guy, take away all his money, undo everything he's done, something like that, right? Now, there very well may be, likely are, billionaires who have not made their fortunes by acting honestly or in good alignment, let's say, for the health of the species, something like that. But is that really true of all billionaires? Is it really true that they are evil people solely for the fact that they have a net worth that exceeds $1 billion? Or has that net worth come to them in trust for properly having made the necessary sacrifices to God? Having made the proper sacrifices in their lives, having sacrificed to the right goals, having a vision which properly brings the individual and the community in alignment with the divine order of creation? That's a good question to ask. Certainly, it may help us remove that spirit of Cain from our lives, something I try to do on a regular basis myself. So let's get to our discussion for today in the domain of finance, speaking perhaps to a certain extent of billionaires, given that many of us have much of our financial future tied up in the decisions of one particular billionaire here. Once again, thanks go out today to Chanyong Lee for sponsoring today's article and video breakdown, as well as to our monthly supporters, Not Medical Advice, Kurt Lusko, Cosmotropic, Dayswag52, Cameron De Leon, and Hey Luckies, aka Faithless Looter, for helping support the channel on a regular basis. Today, I would say largely steady as she goes. This was the case yesterday. This was the case Monday. We aren't seeing too much of a shift in terms of our overall landscape. We do see liquidity coming down a bit, right? Especially in the lending department. I wonder if this is in fact related to potential share recalls or a restriction on lending out such that lenders will be able to receive delivery of the special warrant dividend on Thursday. Remember, if you do not have shares, if you do not have shares of GameStop or an options contract that entitles you to purchase shares and warrants in the future, you will not receive delivery of warrants on dividend issuance date on Tuesday next week. So we do see lending liquidity coming down. I somewhat wonder if that is a product of that potential early recall, something of that sort. Similar wise, in terms, let's say, of our structure, it does look right. We do have this kind of fractal similarity here between the first convertible bond offering, so our April to June run here. We do look like we're doing something of like a mini that, right? The fractal similarity is difficult to shake off from the shot up and then sell off following earnings, then a move off the bottom, the slow grind up, down to this kind of first sell-off divot down to the 20, excuse me, I guess this is the 24-hour moving average here, followed by a bigger move up, a little bit of a sideways period, a big divot, kind of a dip down to the 200, dip down through the 200 here, actually, the 500 4-hour moving average here, and then a rally back up, even slightly higher to the previous position where we are now. I still think it is possible that we see a little bit more highs, more in terms of a high, maybe going into today, going into tomorrow. If our options activity, and this is the thing, our options activity, our volume is coming down. If volume stays on the lower side, like we are seeing now, I would say it is unlikely that we see an extension above $28. 28 is a rather large OI position this week. And as we can see, it does stand out as a very large overhead. It is not offset by really much put gamma at all. It's going to act as a lid on our price action so long as we stay in this current level of volume. What I would say, though, is the lack of borrowable shares at this point, right? This form of restriction in the lending environment does likely prevent us from going ahead and falling off a cliff. Once that liquidity likely becomes restored next week following dividend issuance, I would not be so confident to say that we stay sort of pinned in this low volume environment in this tight $28 to $27 gamma bracket. But I think it does more or less project stability for now. Max Payne is unmoved at 25.50. However, sentimentally, we do see options traders shifting a little bit more bearish, a little bit certainly neutralizing their bets. We didn't really see anything in the short term come through of a major bullish orientation. Options in the short term were skewed mostly neutral, but a little bit bearish. And if we take a look, certainly going into October OPEX, the one trader last week, Friday, who opened up a very large number of short calls at $29, went ahead and closed their entire position. Decided to take a small loss on that position. Of course, there were a lot of contracts traded, so, it'd be a big loss if I were trading that many contracts. But, if I'm slanging around 9,000 contracts, you lose a couple bucks per contract plus the brokerage fee. This is the type of thing we're talking about, right? This is why brokers, market makers go ahead and take trades like this. The stock is up, right? The price is up versus where it was last Friday. It was only 2 full trading days. And nonetheless, hey, this guy had basically 2 decent opportunities here to get out of this trade for a bit of profit. I think he was in here at like 82 cents. So he could have made, assuming standard options fees, like 10-ish %, maybe slightly less. That's not great, right? Ideally, you're not taking this trade for 10%. But he had 2 opportunities to get out of here for a profit. Couldn't do it. Had to take a decent loss, a 6-cent loss plus the brokerage fee, a 10-ish % loss. So instead of a 10-ish % gain, a 10-ish % loss. Wasn't what he was hoping for. The broker will take that because the broker and the market maker, the broker gets fees, so the broker doesn't care. Broker's going to get his fees, but the market maker is going to take that because the market maker knows. Man, and think about how many also now potential losing trades otherwise, let's say, that are closer to the money, now essentially don't matter. Because this guy just closed almost 10,000 long calls for a loss, right? And that's how the market maker goes ahead and is able to sustain this level, at least as I can understand, of liquidity provision. So, like I said, I think we're more or less contained unless something exciting happens. Maybe we do see that move up closer to 28 during tomorrow's trading, just to kind of juice things as much as possible prior as we head into the close of trading, the last day where retail can acquire shares, which will allow them to receive warrants. Little manufactured demand there, a price up to mimic the idea of demand, something like that. Wouldn't be surprised. Would draw in some options trades. Would allow dealers to cash out quite nicely. But that's more or less my outlook for today. My outlook for heading into the end of this week. Obviously, I'm going to be keeping an eye on what happens in terms of our options data as we head into the end of this week, and we'll of course have our live stream on Friday to recap some of what's going on and get hype, I guess, about warrants. But in any case, yeah, thanks very much as always for watching and listening. So great as always hearing from you guys down in the comments, hearing from you guys over on X. Of course, if you want to check out today's article in deeper detail, go ahead. It's linked down in the description of this video, as well as recording of last Friday's live stream. So yeah, look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you at Friday, on Friday at Friday's live stream. And have a great week. Let's go GME, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.